Namaste and welcome to this session on Saptarshis and their connection to the precession of equinoxes. In the last session, we talked about Ayanamsha, which is the dimension of the precession of equinoxes used by the Hindu astronomers and astrologers to know the shift of the equinoctial point from the first of Aries. At the end of that session, I have told you that we will talk about Saptarshis and their connection to the precession of equinoxes in another session, and so we have today's session on Saptarshis. Saptarshis astronomically are 7 stars in the star group called Ursa Major in modern astronomy. The location of the Saptarshis near the pole star, near the Vishnupada, and their special status of being circumpolar stars and not the normally rising and setting stars like the other group of stars which we see in the sky, is because they have a very important place in our Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma or Hindu religion, as it is called in the English language, has its foundation on the Vedic knowledge, and the Saptarshis are the exponents of thousands of Vedic mantras. They are called the exponents or the discoverers of the Vedic mantras because the Vedas are apaurushaya, or not coming from any human being. So by divine revelation after several centuries of penance, the Saptarshis have discovered the Vedic knowledge and expressed them in the suktas of the 4 Vedas. And therefore, we give them a special status in the sky, which is near the North Pole. The 7 rishis have the names of Marichi, Vasishta, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha and Kratu. And they are visible almost throughout the year. Very close to the North Pole, which is around 50 degrees from the pole, midway between the pole and the equator. Sometimes even a little higher and lower depending on the Dakshinayana, Uttarayana slanting of the earth. And these 7 stars in English language or on the modern astronomy, they are designated as alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, psi and eta of the Ursa Majoris. This constellation is called Ursa Major or the Great Bear in modern astronomy or English Western astronomy. The name of Great Bear has come from a misinterpretation of the Sanskrit word for nakshatra. As you know, Sanskrit words have several meanings. Sometimes the word, just like 2 words express the same meaning as synonyms, the word riksha in Sanskrit refers to nakshatra as well as a bear or bhalluka. Many of us have been taught by the Western education that the Indians also learned astronomy from the Greeks, because the Europeans always believe that all knowledge originated in Europe. However, there is every reason or many proofs to believe that the science of astronomy originated in the Indian subcontinent, including mathematics and trigonometry, and it traveled through the Persians, Arabs, and then to Europe, to the Greeks and the Romans. So the name Riksha, which is used for stars, and the name Maharishis, used for the great sages, while getting transmitted through continents, was read in the glossary using another meaning, and instead of the great rishis nakshatra, the nakshatra of the great sages, it came to be called as great bear, confusing riksha the nakshatra to riksha the bear. Anyway, that is not the point of today's discussion. The etymology or the scientific origins are not our point of discussion. We are talking about what Hindu astronomy talks about the 7 sages. So in the sky, when you look at the constellation Saptarishi, you will find Marichi, Vasishta, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha in the order starting from the east. So the easternmost star is Marichi. Then you will find Vasishta. So the easternmost star here is Marichi. Then you will find Vasishta, and then Angiras, and then you find Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, and Kratu. Alpha Ursa Major is called Kratu, beta is Pulaha, and so on up to Marichi. Now, our ancients have discovered that this star is a double star, which in modern astronomy is called Mizar and Alcar. The double star here is called Vasishta and Arundhati. Here in this sloka you can see Tatra Vasishtam Munivaram Upasrita Arundhati Sadhvi. The chaste Arundhati is always very close to Vasishta, it says. It's a double star which is rotating, both of them are revolving around one axis. So the most chaste woman, the Pativrata Arundhati, is near Vasishta always. Even today in the Hindu marriage rituals, we have a habit of spotting Arundhati and Vasishta in the northern sky after the marriage rituals are completed, to remind the newlyweds to live a life like Arundhati and Vasishta. Now, to start with the discussion of Saptarshis and their connection to the precession of equinoxes, we look at a reference point or a datum point recorded by our ancient astronomers about the Saptarshis. In Brihat Samhita, the Adhyaya called Saptarshichara Adhyaya, where Vriddhagarga is also quoted. This sloka reads, Asan Maghasu Munayaha Shasati Prithivim Yudhishtire Nirvatau Shadviga Panjadviyutaha Shakakalastasya Rajnascha. The meaning of this sloka is, when the king Yudhishthira ruled the earth, the sages were at the Magha Nakshatra. And just to clarify the time, the Acharya gives here the period of 2526 years added to the Shaka year is the period of Yudhishthira. Shad Dviga Panja Viyuta. 2526 years. Vriddhagarga, whom Varahamiracharya quotes in the above sloka, talks about Kalidvapara Sandhautu Stitaste Pitrdaivatam Munayo Dharmanirataha Prajanam Palane Rataha. In the Sandhi of, in the junction of Kali and Dwapara, the Munayaha Dharmanirataha, the upholding of Dharma Munis, they stood at Pitrudevatam, at the star of Pitrudevas. Pitrudevas are the presiding deities of Magha Nakshatra. So in these two slokas we can see the Saptarshis were reference to the Magha Nakshatra at the beginning of Kali Yuga or at the end of Dwapara Yuga. At the end of Dwapara Yuga is where Yudhishthira ruled. The Mahabharata Yuddha took place in Dwapara Yuga, you also know. And Bhagavan Sri Krishna walked the earth during Dwapara Yuga. So when Dwapara Yuga ended, when Bhagavan Krishna, Sri Krishna went back to his abode, the Kali Yuga started. And the Munis were, or the Rishis, Saptarishis were at Magha Nakshatra. Now we can see here in the Sakalya Samhita, Brahma Siddhanta, that the location of the Saptarshis are described in much greater detail. It talks about the placement of Saptarishis at the beginning of the Mahayuga. In the previous slide we saw the Rishis were located in the Magha Nakshatra. In this sloka from Brahma Siddhanta of Sakalya Samhita, it talks about the beginning of Mahayuga. Yugato Vishnutarayaha Kradurbadhyai Samahitaha. In the beginning of this Mahayuga, Kratu was at the Vishnutara. Vishnutara means the Sravana Nakshatra. Prachyathrahastai Pulaha Pulahastyo Ato Dasham Sagai. From there 3 degrees to the east was Pulaha, and from there 10 degrees was Pulastya. Atris Tatra Tribihi Bhagaihi Angira Hi Ashtabhistataha. Atri was 3 degrees from there to the east, and then further 8 degrees to the east was Angira. Vasishta Saptavi Tasmad Mariji Dashabhistataha. Vasishta was 7 degrees from there, and Mariji was 10 degrees from there on. So you can see the disposition of the star constellation Saptarishi in this sloka. The sloka is further reading. Bhanartha bhusharaha khartha shadbhana saptasayakaha षष्टिर नभोरवस्था तेषां विक्षेकांशा सुरुत्तरे. This is giving the declination from the north pole. Bhana artha 55, bhusharaha 50, kha artha shad bhana 56, sapta sayaka 57. So these are 55, 50, 50, 57, etc. degrees from the north. Vikshepamshaha syu uttare. From the north, this is the declination angle of these stars. And then it talks further about the movement of these stars. Pratyabdam pragadistesham ashtaulipta munishwaraha. So it says the rishis are moving 8 minutes per year eastwards. Pragati, eastwards. And it also says this movement is small. Sometime only you can notice. It takes Khagha Nakshatra Varshani Tishtanti Munivallabhaha. It takes a complete circle. It takes 2700 years. Nakshatra is 27, Khagha is 00. So 2700 years it takes. So the Sakalya Samhita has mentioned that the rishis move through 8 minutes in 1 year. We know that a star group or an asterism covers a span of 13 degree 20 minutes, which is 1/27th of the 360 degree circle. So 13 degree 20 minutes converted to minutes will become 800 minutes. Therefore, it makes 100 years to move through one star. The same has been expressed that a revolution will be completed in 2700 years. Now the later astrologers like Varahamihira has also repeated the same idea. Here in Brihad Samhita, the sloka says, Ekaigasmin rikshe shatam shatam te charandi varshanam. Te charandi shatam shatam varshanam ekaikasmin rikshe. Riksha means nakshatra, we already talked about it. So in one nakshatra, 100 years, they will travel. This is what Brihad Samhita says. And it also adds, Pragudayade avivarad rijunayadi tatra sanyuktaha. Whichever star is rising in the east, heliacally rising in the east, when the Saptarshis are clearly visible, is the star where they are positioned. So here also we can see the later astrologers followed the same idea of the previous astrologers, saying that the rishis will move through one star in 100 years. The subject of precession we have discussed in the last lesson. We know that the point of intersection of the ecliptic and the equator projected to the celestial sphere represents a point of equal day and night all over the earth when the sun crosses this point, and it is called equinox. And this equinox, due to the axial precession of earth, is moving westward very slowly at the rate of approximately 50 seconds in a year. The rate of precision as well as the point of coincidence, that means the point at which the precision was nil, has been a matter of great discussion and controversies, as we have already noted. Therefore, it is very important for the astronomer and the astrologer to assess this precision as much accurately as possible. The Western astrology uses the equinoxes, the vernal equinoctial point, as the start of their tropical zodiac, and therefore the start of spring season they always mention as the equinoctial point. Whereas the Indian astrology or Hindu astrology uses the sidereal zodiac. So it is more important for the Hindu astrologers to know and grasp the subject of precision in a better fashion. The earlier astronomers were using the solstices at one point of time to assess the precision. The reason for this is that since the solstices are always at 90 degrees to the equinoxes, their motion should be the same. Their motion westward should be identical. So if you properly assess the movement of the solstice, you will be able to assess the movement of the equinoxes. And according to the view of some people, of some astrologers, it is easier to fix the solstice by observation. Therefore, it is left to the convenience of the observer which method we will use. Either we use the observational solstice or the shadow mapping on the day of equinox. So we again take reference to Acharya Varahamihira and his Brihat Samhita for the assessment of the solstice in the past and the present. So here the Acharya says, Ashleshardhat Dakshinam Uttaramayanam Raver Dhanishtadyam. Ashlesha Ardha, half of Ashlesha. From there, Dakshinam, southwards. Uttaram Raver Dhanishtadyam. So the sun's movement towards the south is from half of Aslesha, and towards the north is from the first of Dhanishta. And then the second part of the sloka says, Nunam Kadajit Asid Yena Uktam Purva Shastreshu. Purva Shastreshu, in the olden days or in the old Shastras, this was told, Yena Uktam. Nunam Kadajit Asid. That means it should have been so sometimes. So what the Acharya here says is, the beginning of Dhanishta was the start of northward travel of the sun, and the middle of Aslesha or half of Aslesha was the point of sun's southward travel. At some point of time it should have been so, because the scholars of the ancient times have mentioned it. They would not have mentioned it if that was not so. And then, as on today, means at the time of Paramira, he says, Sampradamayanam savidu karkadagadyam mrugadischa anyat ukta bhavo vikrasi pratyakcha parikshanair viktihi. So what does it mean? At this time, that is refers to the time of writing, the movement of the sun to the south is from the commencement of Karkadaga and to the north from the first of Magara. This can be seen by testing the travel by oneself. So in this passage you can see that a change has definitely taken place in the position of the solstices. In the ancient Rishi's time, Parasara's time, it was in the middle of Aslesha. Now it is in the beginning of Karkadaga. So now, but he has not given any rate of motion calculation in this. He has only made a mention that the ancient acharyas have told this. Therefore, the solstices are also moving. The observation for ascertaining the position of the equinoctial point and the solstice is given in this slokas here. It is self-explanatory. There is not much to be discussed here. Carefully observe the rising and setting sun with reference to a fixed distant object. Like if you fix a distant object like a tower or a tree in the horizon, as you look towards the horizon, and daily watch the sun, rising and setting sun, with reference to this distant object, then you will be able to know when the northward travel and the southward travel start happening. And by using a north-south line on a circle where a shadow can be plotted on the equinoctial noon, we can find out the equinoctial point as well. Here, the second portion of this sloka is meant for astronomers, not for astronomers but for astrologers. It just says some good results may not come if the sun doesn't really follow the path of northward and southward travel. In my previous presentation of Ayanamsha, we have shown that at some point of time the Hindu astronomers have recorded that the equinoctial point coincided with the Kritika Nakshatra. And at that point of time, there was considerable progress happening in the Hindu astronomy, in the Indian subcontinent. In the book by John Bindley titled Historical Review of Hindu Astronomy, he has remarked that between the 10th and 12th century before Christ, remarkable discoveries have been made in astronomy by the Hindu astronomers. Now the star Kritika at that time was the first star of the zodiac. As now we are considering Ashwini as the first star, at some point of time Kritika was considered to be the first star, and the counting of the 27 stars started from Kritika onwards. Now if you look at the equinox being at Kritika, then the southern solstice will be 90 degrees to it, so it will be 2640 of Makara, or that means it is 3 degrees 20 minutes in Dhanishta star. And the color, the solstitial color, drawn through the pole, and 3 degrees 20 in Dhanishta will pass through the middle of Aslesha as well. So this is what has been recorded in our previous sloka from Brihat Samhita. Acharya Varamira says that some point of time the learned scholars have recorded that the colure passed through middle of Asalesha and Dhanishta. Bentley in his work has tried to find the year at which this coincidence occurred, but we are not now very much interested in finding the coincidence point, since we are not deriving any mathematical formula, or we are not deriving the mathematics of arriving at a precision at a particular time. So far we have seen that the Hindu astronomical texts referred 100 year of stay of the Saptarshis in one asterism and a circular motion of the Saptarishis on the 27 stars in 2700 years. This was a matter of discussion and considerable study in the 19th century, because the stars themselves do not have motion with reference to each other, and the zodiacal circle having a relative motion with Saptarshis and the Saptarshis moving in each star was logically very difficult to understand. But several astronomical texts of the Hindus have mentioned this motion. So the astronomers of the European schools have treated this subject with a lot of skepticism. And our attempt here is to show some views to see whether this can be explained. Now, in our previous presentation, discussion on the Ayanamsha, and even in this presentation itself in our previous slides, we have seen that the pole of the earth will revolve around the ecliptical pole in approximately around 25,900 years. And any new position of the pole and the ecliptical pole, we can draw a great circle, and that great circle is called the solstitial colure. And a new circle can be drawn at each position of the pole as the pole rotates around the ecliptical pole. So these circles, when drawn, we can imagine that as the pole is rotating, this circle or the solstitial colure will make a revolution around the ecliptic in a contrary direction to the rashis. We can diagrammatically show this statement. This circle is the equator, and on the equatorial plane we have projected the ecliptic. So in this ecliptic we can have signs Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and so on. And this equator, now if you also divide them into equal parts, you can divide them into 24 parts. So this direction will represent the array of the celestial sphere, array of the stars of the celestial sphere in hours. in 24 hours. So you can start from 24 here and 1, 2, etc. to the star. And the pi here is the ecliptical pole, and the P is the equatorial pole. So equatorial pole is revolving around the equatorial pole. And each new position of P, P1, P2, we can draw a great circle. These lines will represent the great circle, which is the solstitial column. Now, if you see this whole circle here projected onto the equatorial plane is actually the celestial sphere. So all the stars here, every star here, which you see in the sky, will be somewhere in this. Every star will be in somewhere in this circle. And approximately around 11 to 13 degrees, 40 degrees or 45 degrees to the north, south of the equatorial pole is the position of the Saptarshis. So the approximate position of the Saptarshis is here. So this is the 12 hour. This is around 13 hour on the 13 hour and 11 hours here. So the solstitial color, as the pole is rotating in 25,900 years, the solstitial color will pass through or contact through all the stars of the Saptarshis as well. So we can put down what we discussed with that diagram in the previous slide. The precession will make the solstice go round the ecliptic, which is well known. To pass through one nakshatra, the circle will take around 960 years because it's 25,900 years and 27 stars. The revolving circle will be in coincidence with every star in the celestial sphere during the course of its revolution, which is around 25,900 years. In this process, the color will pass through the Saptarshis as well. And since the relative position of the stars will remain unchanged, constant and unchanged, the line drawn from Regulus or Magha Nakshatra between Kratu and Pulaha, touching Kratu, as it is told in the Brihasamhita sloka, that in Yudhishthira's period, the Saptarshis were in Magha. So this is the line of Rishis. There are other slokas also in the other Puranas. I will show it to you later in the presentation, in another slide. So the solstitial color during its revolution coincided with this line also at some time. Although not at the same time as mentioned in the Puranas. The solstice coincided this period with this line of the Rishis. The fixed line was an important epoch or an important reference point in the Hindu astronomy because it is marked as the beginning of Kali Yuga in the Puranas. Just as we have got this first of Ashwini later when the point of coincidence was discovered with zero Ainamsa, we also have a point of the Magha Nakshatra and Saptarshis getting connected, being the beginning of Kali Yuga or the end of Yudhishthira's reign. The coincidence of the color with the line of the Rishis and the further movement of the color away from the Rishis has been alluded as per some of the scholars that these alluded were representation of the movement of the solstice away from the line of the Rishis, which is drawn from the pole to the Magha star, is interpreted as a motion of the Saptarshis themselves, is one opinion. The distance between the new position of a color referred to the line drawn to Magha is a measure of the precession, obviously. Bentley, in his book, during the point of coincidence of equinox at Kritika, calculated the rate of precession at that time, that is somewhere in BC 1500 or so, as 48.56 seconds per year. So if you take it as rounded to 48, then it will take 1000 years to cross one star. But however, our records or the books show that it is 100 year in one asterism, not 1000 years. So what could have happened? So Mr. Brannand in his articles suggests that if the figure of 27,000 years for the revolution approximately could have been written as 2700, losing a cipher, because 28 centuries ago somebody lived and then handed over these observations in his own manuscripts to somebody, and the scattered descendants were carrying on with this knowledge for several centuries, and it could have been so that a cipher must have been lost. But the later authors, since it is an Agama Vakya, it is a given by the very learned scholars, they did not question it. So Mr. Brannand observes that the complex subject of precession and the solstices and the Saptarshis connection to it was somehow lost without sufficient explanation because of this minor error in the text which could not be explained. Now some other modern researchers have tried to arrive at other possible explanations. We will see them now. We saw the Brihat Samhita reference about Saptarshis being at Magha Nakshatra during the reign of Yudhishthira. And then we have discussed that the line of Rishis is the line drawn from the pole to Magha Nakshatra between Kratu and Pulaha, or passing very close to Kratu. This is now described in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 12th canto, slokas 27 and 28. Saptarshīṇāṃ tu yau purvo drishyete utitau divi tayostu madhye nakshatram drishyete yat samam nishi tenaiva rishayo yuktas tishtandabdhashatam nranam tve tvadiye dvijakale adhuna chasrita maghaः. Now the tika, which is highly regarded as the best tika for Srimad Bhagavatam, the commentary by Sridhar Swamin, talks like this: Ayam artaha. Pragagra Shakatakaram Tara Saptakam Saptarshi Mandalam. Now you can translate it one by one sentence. The constellation shaped like a cart with the front in the east is called the Saptarshi Mandalam. Tatra kinjit unnade esha agrasthaniyo Marichi. Among them, at the front is Marichi. Tata paschad Anamra Yuga Kandharakaram Vasishta Sabharya. And at the yoke portion of the cart is Vasishta and his wife. To the west, to the base of the cart is Angiras. Then on the square are Atri and Atri on the northeast, Pulastya to his south. West of Pulastya is Pulaha and to his north is Kratu. The two stars which become visible first on rising are the ones named Pulaha and Kratu. This is called as a Purvo Drishyate Udito Divi. A line drawn through their middle, to their east, Tayostu Madhye, will meet any nakshatra with their midpoint equidistant from the pole. Yet samam nishi. Tenaiva rishayo yukta tishtanti abdashatam nirnam. The rishis will stay at this conjunction for 100 years. And he says, now, Edvija, you are at, now they are at Maga in your time. Now, from the description of this position, we can find that the Saptarshis span about 40 degrees of arc and they cannot be in any one constellation at any time. So, one of the Saptarshi stars only has to be in some constellation. Indrasena in his research paper on Saptarshi calendar opines the following, that the point of coincidence of the line from the pole to the ecliptic passing through the rishis, as noted in this sloka, is about 1 degree of arc, and the point will remain apparently stationary for 100 years. What he is trying to say is, the point which is around less than 1 degree of arc or nearly 1 degree of arc is the coincident point what we are talking about, not the constellation itself. So the tropical zodiac is moving at the rate of 1 to 1.5 degrees in 72 years, considering 54 minutes as the rate of movement. So the point of coincidence of the line of rishis with the ecliptic will move through the tropical zodiac, while the rishis are actually not moving against any fixed stars. You are considering the tropical zodiac as a moving zodiac. Therefore, at each point of time, the line drawn through the Saptarshis will meet some point in the tropical zodiac, and the tropical zodiac's position, if you consider it as the moving point as the first of Aries, then a new point will be there. So therefore, the point of coincidence stays for 100 years, and the travel of this point takes 960 or 1000 years in one lunar mansion. This is his conviction. So with these two explanations and putting a little thought to this, we can see that the motion of the Saptarshis through the stars for a certain number of years in each star is actually an allusion to the precession of equinoxes. And this knowledge of the precession, apart from whatever has been given in the Siddhantas with the calculation and mathematical derivations, in the Puranas and in more easier layman languages, this has been told to make us understand that the Saptarshis, who are the wealth of knowledge, who are the exponents of the Vedic hymns, who pass down all the knowledge to us, are also expressing the precession of equinoxes through a illusionary movement of theirs. Now we have a small poem here which I have written. In the northern heavens shine the seven sages, the seven stars forming the celestial dipper, a vessel of light that pours wisdom across the night. Like the eternal scriptures guiding seekers, its pointer star leads the way to the still center, the axis of truth. Ursa Major is not just a constellation, but a celestial sentinel ever watchful, circling the sky in silent guardianship. Ancient seers saw it in the form of eternal protector, watchful, protective, circling the sky without rest. It reminds us that the universe itself is a scripture, each star a syllable in the hymn of creation. To gaze upon the rishis is to remember that the path to truth is written in the heavens, and that the eternal self, like the Polaris, remains unmoved amidst the turning of the worlds. Thank you very much. Dhanyavada.